didn't want to get caught up there and get scorched. We learned a lot in the 50s about fires. We learned a lot about aircraft operation. We learned a lot about jets. And it is a total different operation from props. We still had, when I deployed for the first time on the Bonnie deck, we had one squadron of the F-7F, which had the 14-foot nose strut and everything. And we had two squadrons of AD prop-driven airplanes. And we had FJs. The FJ-1 was a version of the F-86 Air Force first jet, actually second jet. They had the F-84, which we call the T-2B. The F-84 was the first jet that had guns in it and everything, and was used for a very short time in Korea. And they learned a lot there. I joined about 9 months after Korea and was there at North Island. The jet age started about the same time that I joined. They were R&D and learning. We didn't get into the real jet age until about 1957, 58 and on. And they phased out the props as much as they could. But the only bomb load aircraft that we had during that phase in the 50s that could carry any kind of a bomb load was the AD prop jet, not jet, but prop aircraft with an R-33 engine in it, gasoline engine. And they didn't like gasoline engines because they could burn easy. You had to have gasoline hoses running all over the flight deck to fuel them. We didn't want that. They went to kerosene, JP. Kerosene had a very much lower ignition point until you atomized it. And the JP could burn hotter and you get more energy out of it. JP came with the jets, and that was in the latter part of the 50s, and we were all learning. The first time we went to sea with the gutless to cutlass, I was in VA 56, and we had traded our F9s, F9F, Phantoms, for the F-7Fs. After we had done our first cruise on the Bonnie deck with the F9s, and we learned how to operate with the F9 jets until they got up to the F9F6 version, and that was the first one where they had slightly tapered back wings, and they found out that with the tapered back wings, they could drop the leading edge, which was gravity fed, would drop down, and they could land the jet at a slower speed because it destroyed the airflow in such a manner that it gave them greater lift. And these were mechanical. They fell out when you slowed the airplane down enough. It came out on the leading edge of the swept wing. And it was one of the first swept wings other than the F-86. Follow-on cruises, I went to F-86s. But that's a whole different story. We're back here learning in the jet age how to manage these things. And we had to teach people how to start them. You had a little jet starter or a cartridge. You would put a cartridge in, fire the cartridge, and hopefully it would crank the rotary engine in there fast enough so you could hit the igniter and something would come out burning in the back. It always had a flame. And once it got going, the flame would retract, and all you had was 500-degree air. We learned that you never walk behind one because there's enough thrust at idle to pick you up and run you about 50 feet back. I could swear that it happens that way because it happened to me. You also learn that any closer to that jet engine in the back of about 30 feet and you will feel the heat. You will burn. So my first episode was that when I came out of an island structure on the Bonnie Dick, and they had an FJ running, and the blast came out, and it hit me. My goggles went here, came back, snapped me in the face. I could feel the heat burning like crazy, and it blew me down in the flight deck. So I learned from that point on, you can never tell if the engine's running with all the noise with the jets. You always have to look for the evidence. And the evidence is when you try to look through the exhaust, you see ripples because the heat wave is there to distort everything on the other side of it. If you can see a ripple, you go under or way around or preferably way in the front. So it was a learning experience for the troopers running the flight deck, and it was a learning experience for the maintenance guys to be where they should be and how they operate it. And it learned how you could easily be burned or blown over the side or scorched. Now we get into the semi-jet age. We're on a carrier and we've got jet engines. So we need some way to start the jet engines other than cartridge starters. They come out with air start units. It looks like a little torpedo. It's got a jet engine in it, and it's blasting hot air out the back of it. But it's taking turbine hot air and putting hot turbine air at 600 degrees through a 6-inch, 8-inch tube into an air starter in the jet engine. That also gets the heat going in the jet engine, and it gets the fan, the various stages of the fans blowing around in there. And with the heat and an igniter and add fuel, it lights off and you get a flame out of the tail end. If everything works fast, the flame in the rear end goes away in about 60 seconds and you don't burn any paint back there or don't cause any damage. Otherwise, you overheat the paint on the side of the aircraft and you burn up some of the auxiliary components attached to the engine. So it's all a learning process. Where do you go and how do you approach a jet? You don't go in the front because the suction will take you right in if you're 6 feet from it. All he has to do is run up on the power, and a good 50 feet in front of you, you will feel the suction taking you there. So we're out for the first time, which was my first cruise on the Bonnie Dick, and we were learning. The second cruise on the Bonnie Dick was an active show the flag, keep the Chi-Coms from running over and trying to take Taiwan away, and so forth. So we had to show the flag there, and you had to do various operations between the Chinese coast and Taiwan, which is only like 26 miles. But for the U.S. to own the channel between the island there to keep the communist Chinese from trying to take Taiwan, we had to show the flag repeatedly. So the ship would sail in there and do operations, launch airplanes, maybe land a few of them over on Taiwan, show the flag, come back out, and then come back and join the fleet, the 7th Fleet, and go up towards Japan to do the operations and stuff before we started Vietnam. Vietnam came along years later in 86, and in 76, 75, 74 time frame, we were sailing between Taiwan and the mainland, and we were showing the flag and trying to keep the communists from expanding any further. They already run us out of Hong Kong because the 100-year lease on Hong Kong with the Brits had expired. I was fortunately enough to visit Hong Kong twice before it got turned back over to the Chinese. And I was fortunate enough then, the last day of the time frame when Taiwan had to stop our flights into Taiwan, and this was back in 1973, I was able to catch a ride with a P-3 patrol squadron. I had a roommate there that was a commander, and I was a commander at the time, and we went back over to Taiwan to do our final shopping. So we took a P-3 with a crew, and we went over to do our final shopping before they closed up the Navy Exchange there, like they had closed the one up in Taiwan, or Hong Kong. So I got to visit those ports in the 60s before they were taken over or put out of bounds.